In October 2018, the word Kubrickian entered the Oxford English Dictionary. It was a landmark moment, but the Kubrickian was already all around us. In Kubrickian nightclubs, Kubrickian shopping centres, Kubrickian office blocks, Kubrickian wallpaper, Kubrickian socks. The OED goes on to mention Kubrick's meticulous nature, the brilliance of his technical filmmaking. That's the dictionary definition Kubrick, the all-seeing eye, the perfectionist who put actors like model figures into the middle of masterpieces designed to house his obsessions. It's the idea of Kubrick that shaped the idea of Kubrickian cinema, humming with menace, sharing his preoccupations, the arrival of artificial intelligence. The brooding origin story. The great cold cosmos. And this is all Kubrickian, even if it does tend to narrow the influence of Kubrick down to just two films, The Shining and 2001. Still, to make Kubrickian films, we have Kubrickian directors, master builders exerting total control at giant scale. Throughout his career, our director always talked about as the heir to Kubrick has been Christopher Nolan, never more so than with his sci-fi fable, Interstellar.
Hey Dad, checking in, saying hi.
But this is where the Kubrickian gets complicated. Just because a film takes place in space, directed by someone we think in some way is like whatever we think Kubrick was, is that enough? Would the real Kubrick have ever made a film this touchy-feely? And films that seem highly Kubrickian can be something else entirely, even at the same time. Jonathan Glazer's mesmerising Under the Skin could feel like Kubrick one moment, and anything but the next, out with a hidden camera in the hubbub of real-world Glasgow. So maybe we need to expand our sense of the Kubrickian to better represent a filmmaker who never fit a single box and always kept a surprise in store. For instance, less talked about is the influence of Barry Lyndon, Kubrick's teasing portrait of 18th century social climbing. But a film just as Kubrickian in its own way, and with its own modern admirers. An influence on directors who tend not to be talked about as Kubrickian, but they are. Justin Simien said his provocative comedy Dear White People was informed by Kubrick in general, and Barry Lyndon in particular. And the same film was surely in the air when Lucretia Martel made her dreamlike historical drama, Zama. Samantha Morton remembered her first experience of Kubrick in Anywhere Out of This World. Kubrick spent his life sending signals into the atmosphere for all kinds of people to pick up and become all kinds of filmmakers. Kubrick gets thought of now as all about order, but there was always something messy in his movies too. The wildness of Enter the Void, directed by another fan of 2001, Gaspar Noé.
So beautiful.
Away from the cosmic, dark commentary on society and politics fills his movies, in The Generals of Dr. Strangelove.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here, this is the war room!
And the savage youth of A Clockwork Orange, echoed half a century later in Nocturama. And Strangelove reminds you of the other thing about Kubrick that too often gets forgotten. He was funny. For all the grandeur of his cinema, Kubrick always had a taste for slapstick. The nastiest black humour too. There's nothing more Kubrickian than that.
Here's Johnny!
That Kubrick was expertly channeled by American Psycho.
Tonight, I just had to kill a lot of people!
Of course, the real Kubrick started out as a photographer, taking true-life shots in New York. Maybe that's why other former photographers like Lynn Ramsey feel so connected to him. Those years of street photography gave him a gift not just for the flawless, but frantic handheld verite. And an openness to the unplanned, so the king of the perfectionists would find room for the genuine accidental backwards tumble of George C. Scott in Strangelove. The chaos of the street was embraced in the films he made as a hungry New York 20-something, and the ones he made as an old master. Maybe the hidden camera street life in Under the Skin was the real Kubrickian, after all. It's all of this, all these Kubricks, that keep him fueling our imaginations. Not just at the movies, he's there on all our screens. The Beethoven used at the heart of A Clockwork Orange, now the Beethoven used at the heart of Russian Doll. The Atlanta episode Teddy Perkins, made to evoke The Shining. But yes, he's right there too, in the bloodstream of our most vital new films. Kubrickian cinema? Kubrick is cinema. And after 20 years without him, who said it better about where we are in 2019?